Senator from Oklahoma.
I have 4 requests for committees to meet today during the session of the Senate, and they have approval of the majority and the minority leaders.
Duly noted.
All right, Madam President, for 58 years, the Congress has passed the National Defense Authorization Act with large bipartisan margins, and I believe we're going to do so again this year. In fact, we must. If it were up to me, it would have already been done by now. People have to realize how this is the most important bill of the year. It's one that we have to do. We have to do by the end of the year. That's the end of December. We're not going to fund our military. I mean, that's how serious it is. I'll keep working with my colleagues in the House and the Senate to get this done. I'm going to say that again because there's an ugly rumor out there to the contrary. We are still working to get a comprehensive bill done. We're going to keep working on it. It's even more important because of what happened over the weekend. Our brave Special Operations Forces successfully executed a dangerous mission to get ISIS leader al-Baghdadi, and it was successful. It was the right call by President Trump to bring down one of the most dangerous terrorists that the world has ever seen, and it was successful. It also underscored the importance of the annual defense authorization bill. There's no better time to pass an NDAA, that's the National Defense Authorization Bill, that puts our service members and their families first than after a perilous operation demonstrating bravery, service, and sacrifice of our troops, because it took a lot of people to pull this thing off. But to ensure that we give the men and women of the armed forces the tools that they need to fight and win, no matter what, we are filing a skinny bill today. Let me explain what that is. We have to have a defense authorization bill. It has to happen. It's the one it's happened for 58 years in a row. If it's happened for 58 years in a row, it's going to continue to happen. We all know that. Well, the problem with that is everybody knows it's going to pass. And so consequently, people put more and more things on the bill. Many things have nothing to do with the military because they know that the bill is going to pass. And what happens is that then they decide to get everything in there, and consequently there are so many people lined up with different things they want to put on the defense authorization bill that we have not been able to come to an agreement. Now, this has happened in the past, and what happens is that in the event that the defense authorization bill, and this would be the largest bill of the year, most significant bill of the year, if for some reason we're not able to pass it, it's military operations will stop. The bill, a skinny bill, is simple. It extends necessary authorities for military operations, takes care of the service members and their families, and authorizes essential military construction and acquisition programs. That's it. That's one paragraph. That's all it does. And so that part has to pass. And so at the end of the day, that's what we have to do by the end of this year. That's December, the end of December. Now there's this old document nobody reads anymore. It's called a Constitution. If you read that, it says what we're really supposed to be doing, what's really important. And all the things we do, I say to my friend from West Virginia, sometimes they're not all that significant. This is that significant. And that's why this is important, and it's going to pass. We will make sure it passes. So by introducing this as a skinny bill, it takes everything that has nothing to do with the military and takes it out. And we just passed the bill to take care of our troops. Here on Capitol Hill, the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, is an institution itself, the last bill of its kind, an authorization bill that passes every year. We always have disagreements within and between parties on the future of national security, but we've always managed to overcome those divisions to support our military. And this year is not going to be any different. Earlier this year, I worked with my Democratic colleague, Senator Jack Reed, to produce a bipartisan NDAA in the Senate. We did a great job. I mean, we passed that thing out of, we spent hours on it, but we did pass it ultimately out of committee, unanimously, Democrats and Republicans alone, brought it to the floor, and we passed it. Now, look, it's not the same bill. It's not the bill that Jack Reed and Jim Inhofe would necessarily agree on every aspect, but these are tough decisions, and we had to make decisions, and we made decisions. And consequently, when it came up to the floor, it passed by 86 to 6. Only 6 people opposed it in this entire body. Well, the same's got to be true with any final agreement on fiscal year 2020 NDAA. That bill will require 60 votes here in the Senate, and it will require Republican votes in the House. The bill that came out of the House, from the House Committee on the Defense Authorization Bill in the House, didn't have one Democrat voting for it. And this, obviously, it's got to have Republicans in the House to vote for it. It's got to pass by a 60% margin, and there's no other way that it can be done. So we continue making progress. We know we can't pass a bill with as many partisan provisions as we saw in the House bill, things like unprecedented restrictions on the president's ability to defend America, defend the nation, and putting social agenda above needs of our troops. Unfortunately, the same problems slowing progress on the NDAA has also stalled the appropriation process. When I supported the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2019, I argued that a lower top line was acceptable if it got us on-time passage of the NDAA and the defense funding. But now we're facing a delayed NDAA and the real responsibility for a full-year continuing resolution. This is unacceptable. The Department of Defense has never operated under a full-year CR. Now, CR is a continuing resolution. A CR is something that would be disastrous. So what it would say is we're going to do the same thing for the military and the rest of government as we did last year. Well, the needs have changed. I mean, we have new programs that have to be authorized, have to be voted on, and so it'd be a huge waste of taxpayers' money if we were unable to get this thing done. We know that a full-year CR would press pause on hundreds of new weapons programs and leave tens of billions of dollars in the wrong places. We had a hearing where we had General Martin. He's the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. For the Army alone, he said, we'd be looking at delays to New START programs and increased costs of 37 programs totaling $7 billion. That's according to the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. That's the Army alone. The total figure is going to be somewhere around $22 billion that would be lost. So all said, this would put our work rebuilding our military even further behind and waste enormous amounts of taxpayers' dollars. The National Defense Strategy, now that's this book. This is kind of interesting because this book was put together by Democrats and Republicans, all with expertise and background in military, equal number of Democrats and Republicans, and they all agreed this was going to be our defense strategy, and they have a National Defense Strategy Committee. Well, that National Defense Strategy provided a clear vision, it's in here, of the serious challenges that face us and the necessity of urgent change at significant scale. That was Secretary Mattis had stated it that way. Failure to pass an NDAA and accept a full-year CR would stop our nation's defense strategy in its tracks. It would undo all the good work that we've done with Secretary Esper, with the President of the United States and the Pentagon, as well as our partners, and to follow the recommendations of the NDS Commission report. Now, this is not just inside the Beltway gridlock. The world is watching. Our allies and our enemies are watching. They want to know if America is serious about its role in the world and in its own national defense. Failure to pass the basic legislation on a timely basis to support our military sends a terrible signal that undermines our national security. And think of the signal that sends. Our troops are out there risking their lives to defend us here at home. Caring for our troops is about the only thing anyone in this town agrees on. If we lose that bipartisan support, it'll be hard to get it back, and we need it now more than ever. Now, China and Russia. This is interesting because we didn't used to be that concerned about them. I would say that back during the Obama administration, his priorities were not the same. He was very honest about it. He had other priorities. And so we didn't do the job we should have done at that time for our military. China and Russia are not waiting around for us to end our disagreements with each other. During the last administration, under Obama, our military's funding decreased by 25%. That was between the years of 2010 and 2015. We decreased the amount of funding for our military in that administration by 25%. Meanwhile, China had increased spending by 83%. Stop and think about that. China increases spending by 83%. We reduced by 25%. They're continuing a campaign of aggression, building islands in the South China Sea. You know, our allies over the South China Sea are watching what China's doing there and around the world and what we are not doing, and they've come to the conclusion that a third world war may be imminent, and they're not sure whose side they want to be on. Beijing, you know, put that chart, there it is there. This thing that we're seeing right here is a hypersonic weapon. This is the state-of-the-art weapon. This is one, it's a missile that travels at 5 times the speed of sound. And this is something that we were ahead back during the beginning of the previous administration, and we're now behind. Right now, China is parading dozens of massive hypersonic missiles, and we haven't even built one yet. There they are. That's a picture I haven't seen until today. Those are hypersonic weapons, and they were on Tiananmen Square on October 1st of 2019. We didn't even, a lot of people didn't know that they have not just caught up with us, they passed it. We don't have one out, we haven't built one yet, and there they are. And people don't realize where China and Russia are. Well, Russia, that's China, but Russia continues to develop new and dangerous nuclear weapons while it expands its influence in the Middle East and elsewhere. I have no doubt that a united America can face these challenges. I fear that a divided America, a country that allows defending America to be a partisan issue, cannot. The path to a final defense bill is, as it always has been, bipartisan. The Defense Authorization Bill has historically enjoyed broad bipartisan support, and that's not an accident. Both parties have compromised to get a bill worthy of our troops' sacrifices. I hope that we get a place where we can find common ground to give our troops and military a comprehensive bill. Now, that's what we want to continue to do. We've been working on this bill for a long period of time. It normally doesn't take this long. And we've gotten down to what they call the 4 leaders. I'm one of those 4 leaders that's been trying to put this together, but we have not been able to get it. So what we're doing with this bill is we are putting the bill up, and we're going to get it on the floor so that we can be ready. Here's the problem. If we don't do it, we can sit around and do nothing for the next through the month of November, and when December gets here, all of a sudden we're going to be faced with the fact that we're going to have some bill that takes care of just the military, not all the other stuff that's on the bill. But to do this, you got to pass it out of committee. You got to take it to the floor of the Senate. You've got to pass it out, and then if you can get that far, the House has to do the same thing. Then we go into conference and we confer on this thing. Well, obviously that's going to take not just days but weeks. So to prepare for the unlikely possibility that we don't get together, we do have the skeleton bill that we're going to introduce. I'm going to introduce it in an hour from right now, and it's a bill. It's the only thing that we can do right now to make sure that we can take care of our troops if we're not able to get the comprehensive bill completed. So that's the reason for it. I will be introducing it, and it's every provision in that bill is a provision to enhance our military efforts, to pay our troops, and to take care of our country the way we have been able to do in the past. With that, I will yield the floor.